Arena Director General, Mr. Francesco Lacamera, at the APRA Investment Forum last week, and I quote, "APRA sets a new benchmark for international cooperation, ensuring that support from the global north for Africa's energy transition fully complements the continent's own priorities," end of quote. Let me, therefore, use this opportunity to applaud IRENA for its numerous support to African countries in our renewable energy drive. IRENA's technical and other supports continue to be invaluable in the drive to close the energy gap in Africa. At the national levels, countries within our continent continue to make significant efforts through reforms and increased funding in addressing the ever-increasing energy needs. For example, in Sierra Leone, His Excellency President Dr. Julius Maada Bio has set a clear goal for transition to transition the country into a net energy exporter that will provide economic development by achieving universal energy access by 2035. Sierra Leone's ambition is to grow grid generation capacity from 200 megawatts to 1 gigawatt in 10 years and add 200 mini-grids to support energy access and agricultural production. It is worth noting at this stage that similar initiatives are being implemented at scale in many other parts of Africa. Distinguished guests, despite these concrete efforts, Africa continues to face huge challenges, especially with funding gaps when compared to other regions of the world. The recently released report by IRENA 2024, which is titled "The Energy Transition in Africa, Opportunities for International Collaboration with a Focus on the G7, references the African Leaders' Nairobi Declaration on Climate Change and the Call to Action, which is called the Nairobi Declaration. Is now the basis for Africa's common position on the global climate change process. The report further points out that the Nairobi Declaration acknowledges that energy transition will be unique in Africa, as the circumstances in which it will take place are singular. And this is demonstrated by the fact that some 570 million people in sub-Saharan Africa still lack access to electricity. Almost 960 million lack access to clean cooking. The energy consumption of the African population remains low at 1/3 of the global average. And with less than 7 years remaining to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, of the 2030 agenda, which are meant to address these critical basic needs. Excellencies, it must be emphasized that gender equality and women's empowerment are fundamental to achieving sustainable energy for all. Millions of women in Africa still lack basic access to reliable and sustainable sources of electricity and clean cooking, which negatively impacts their health, well-being, livelihoods, and local environments. Ensuring access to clean, modern, sustainable energy solutions for women currently left behind is a fundamental element of a just and inclusive energy transition. Gender equality is not only smart economics, but also a human rights issue. Let me remind us all here that if the world is to achieve its renewable objectives, there must be equitable distribution and access to funding, particularly for smaller countries. In the words of Her Excellency Dr. Amani Aboud Zaid, African Union Commissioner for Infrastructure, Energy and Digitalization, at the recent G20 Energy Transition Ministerial meeting in Brazil, and I quote, "The AU welcomes and supports the priority on accelerating finance for energy access and energy transitions in developing countries. A faster, more steady, and predictable flow of investment is urgently required, A commitment to facilitating investment in Africa's energy sector will be pivotal for advancing global energy transitions. End of quote. Distinguished guests, to that end, I call on bigger countries, major global multilateral institutions, and financial agencies to support the individual and collective effort of African countries in order to provide better livelihood opportunities for our people and save our planet from the many climate challenges we face today. With a focus on 5 key pillars, and with energy being one of those pillars, Italy's Mattei Plan is expected to bolster that needed international coalition and partnership in closing the energy gap in Africa. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me conclude that while it is true that Africa is at the crossroad in its energy transition, let me equally remind us all that our world, and indeed humanity, is at a crossroad with ongoing wars and conflicts in most parts of the world. We need sustained and concerted diplomatic efforts to silence the guns and halt the war tanks to save humanity and our planet. I thank you all for listening.